looks like I'm live. All right, sorry folks. I'm learning a new technology without my husband, who helped me set this up here. So let me get one more thing figured out, and I think I'll be ready to go. I need to get this over here. Okay, cool. Good afternoon. Good morning, beautiful people. I'm Heather Gray with Discovering Health. And this morning I am talking to you about leaky gut, leaky brain, and how your food choices impact your brain health. Like on my little description, you know, I was kind of like, duh, Heather, you know. But it's not so duh. I mean, it might seem very common sense to a lot of us, but how many folks, how many times have you not put the correlation together, right, of what you're eating or what you just took and how you're feeling? You know, I used to do it all the time, especially with coffee. I was, you know, massively adrenal fatigued and had attention issues, and I would typically self-medicate with, you know, high doses of sugar, high doses of caffeine, and then I couldn't figure out why I was so anxious and crawling out of my skin. So, yeah, so what you eat definitely has an impact on your blood sugar, on your gut, and when your gut is impacted, it's also impacted your brain. There's so much research out there right now that is correlating the gut-brain connection. And like, for instance, my poor kiddo who's celiac, he works at Wingstop, and it's awesome that a lot of restaurants have come up with gluten-free options. But the sad part about that is it's had celiacs, especially, think that they can eat out safely, which is really not the truth unless they're in a completely dedicated gluten-free kitchen, which Wingstop is not. So kiddo thinks that he's eaten one of the gluten-free options. Turns out it's not. He's getting cross-contaminated. He spent the night puking his guts up. And then I remember telling him a day or two later, I was like, kiddo, you know, if you start going through anxiety and depression, you know, try not to let it overwhelm you, that, you know, you jacked up your brain when you ate that food. I mean, jacked up your gut when you ate that food, and then it's going to affect your brain. And he started crying. He's like, oh my gosh, Mom, I've been such a mess, and my anxiety's through the roof. And it's like, yeah. I do a lot of wheat Zoomers on people these days, wheat and dairy Zoomers, because those are like two of the most addictive foods out there, and they also cause some of the most inflammation. And so if you've got inflammation on the body, you've got inflammation on the brain, you know, needless to say, it's not going to work right? So I had another instance where, you know, the person asked me, hey, you know, once I take out the gluten and I start to heal my gut, will my depression get better? And I said, absolutely. You know, again, leaky gut, leaky brain. Mental illness is a conversation that needs to happen more often. They've said that since 2020, anxiety and stress has raised across the board. You know, so just like with COVID, putting health kind of in the forefront, people looking at their immune systems, people looking at what they're eating, the toxins they're putting in their body, it's the same thing with mental awareness and the stress and this anxiety. I can kind of look at it a little bit of as a blessing in disguise, right? Because now it's bringing the topic to the forefront again, and where it needs to happen. There are so many people who suffer in silence and have no idea even where to turn when it comes to mental illness and their diet. And, you know, we've been taught that there's really only, you know, one or two ways to handle mental illness, you know, talk therapy and take a prescription. And for so many people, that just doesn't work. You know, there's a lot of research out there that says that, you know, the talk therapy, you know, why it might be good to vent in the moment, but to keep talking about it actually kind of keeps that energy alive and never being able to like fully process it. So I had mentioned the other day that, you know, on top of this talk, there's also an announcement. So I met up with another phenomenal practitioner. Gosh, she's amazing, here in town. And she's got some really amazing toys. One of them is this cool looking pod thing that you get in, and it's got flashing lights on the eyes, and it's got little electrodes that you hook up to your ears, and it's like got a pulse stimulation. And I won't tell you what else it does because it's kind of, I don't want to scare you. But basically, it was designed, or no, she found out about it by a guy who had PTSD in the military, like through the roof. Like when he went to get tested for it, he was off the charts. And then he did this therapy once a day for a month, and actually was able to stop his whole protocol and program through the VA for PTSD. It's the beautiful thing about the brain, right, is its neuroplasticity, and we're just starting to scratch the surface of what the brain can do. There's combinations of things that cause mental illness, and sadly, if you focus on just one of the many things that cause it, you're only going to get so much better. So that's why I'm loving this part in my journey. And it's funny that this is the conversation we spoke about today. I almost like canceled it last minute just because the last 24 hours has been a total shit show in my life. And I got into it really bad with a family member. I made a healthy boundary, and he proceeded to belittle me, insult my intelligence, and call my husband a name. And then I got into a yelling match with my stepson, which we never do. So needless to say, I had literally just turned off the waterworks right before the camera came on, and I just didn't feel like being up here kind of raw and vulnerable, but I guess that's the way the universe wanted it, because here I am. So there's a couple different avenues that I feel like you have to address when it comes to mental illness, and so the food part is one. It's huge. You have to heal the gut in order to heal the brain. You have to get the inflammation off the gut in order to get the inflammation off the brain. Number two is I'm working with a couple different apps. One of them is called HeartMath, and it's this really easy little contraption that you plug into your computer, and it's also got a little electrode that clips onto your ear, and it measures your coherence of your heart and your brain. So it helps you to sit there in gratitude, right? It wants you to think of things that you're grateful for. It wants you to get into that brain-heart connection, which, if you grew up like I did, that was not cultivated in any way, shape, or form. Any type of emotion other than anger was seen as weakness, and you were kind of torn apart for it. So it's helping me learn to grasp that concept, to feel what that feels like, and to know that tool, so that in the heat of a moment, the plan is that I'll be able to kind of self-soothe, that I'll be able to get into that space of connection, of love, of compassion for myself and for others. Like I said, that was never cultivated when I was growing up. The other thing that I've been doing is a $14 little app called neurocycling. And so, see, the other reason I've had such a hard time getting into my emotions, I used to belong to this personality profiling group on steroids called Higher Alignment. And there's a communication style, and it's think, act, feel, and everybody's got a combination of the three, right? And I'm what they call a think, act, feel. So I think about something first, then I get into action, which to a lot of people can seem and look wishy-washy, but it's not. I've actually thought about it, and I'm now getting into action. Most people are actually act last. And I'm feel last. So it's really hard for me to get into my feelings. I will think, act, think, act, think, act, think, act, think, act, and I'll continue that cycle. So the beautiful part about this neurocycling app is it gets me to slow down, it gets me to journal, which I hate doing, and it gets me in a different frame of mind, and it helps me feel, right? Because when we don't feel, our feelings come out sideways. You heard that old expression that if you don't heal your wounds, you will bleed all over those who did not cut you, right? Or the other expression, the only way out is through. So something I used to tell my kiddo quite a bit growing up, but I even had a hard time really owning what I was saying. You know, I would say it's okay to feel your feelings, just don't live there. But I didn't quite understand what that meant. And that meant is if you continue suppress, it's going to come out sideways. Sideways in the form of an emotional blow up, or sideways in the form of a disease, right? A lot of disease manifests as suppressed emotions. It's one way of your body being like, okay, you're not going to deal with this, deal with it now, right? So, back to that announcement. So the woman with the really cool, she had a couple different tools used to help with addiction, anxiety, depression, sleep, PTSD, other types of trauma. So one of them is that little pod thing. It's got frequency, it's got lights, and it's got some other cool modalities. Like there's not really a magic bullet out there when it comes to healing. That thing is about as close as you're going to get. Of course, you have to look at lifestyle. You have to look at your diet. You have to, it is not a magic bullet, but it is very darn close. And then she's got this cool little thing that you put on your head, and it's got magnets, and it helps balance your brain. It's got about 20 different cycles that it can go through. Again, anxiety, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, addiction. And depending on what you choose, it will activate certain magnets around the brain. So I have access to these tools. My clients have access to these tools now. So I'm super, super excited to be adding that into my practice, because I'm done putting Band-Aids on things. The reason that I think I picked this up so much right now is because I was listening to mentors on FDN, Ryan and Jennifer Woodward, talking about stress and how it affects the body. And I'm laying in my infrared sauna bed, and I'm getting my sweat on, and I'm listening. And all of a sudden, Ryan started talking about, people with chronic illnesses like myself, Lyme disease, right? He's like, even if you've got the Lyme disease taken care of, the alarm bells in your brain are still going off. Nobody shut them off, right? So basically saying that even though I'm feeling better with the Lyme, my brain keeps thinking there's something going on. Alarm, alarm, alarm. And it keeps taking me back to set point. No matter how good I get with my diet, with my body, with my health, I end up getting back to set point because I've never addressed the trauma. And part of that was because, too, I was gaslighted quite a bit by my parents, especially my mother, that my childhood wasn't really that bad, and there's nothing to work through, and you're just a pussy, and get over it, and rise above your raising is what she used to tell me, that Dr. Phil told her. And so now that I'm actually willing to slow down and rip those damn scabs off and really look at them. And so now I'm meeting these cool people on the path that are helping me heal, and I'm going to be able to help my clients heal. Because if we keep going down this road of dysfunction, of mental illness, not addressing it properly, instead of just putting Band-Aids on it, we're going to get more mass shootings. We're going to get more road rage incidents. We're going to get more, you name it. Kids on antipsychotics, antidepressants, anti-anxiety. It's not going to get better until we actually address the problem, and we talk about it, and we bring this into the light. Even as close as 6 months ago, I was thinking suicidal thoughts. And ever since I started my program, and ever since I started working on things, I haven't had a suicidal thought. I haven't had a suicidal thought in 4 months, and that's a record for me. It's pretty common with folks with Lyme disease when you have something that's active in your brain. So I had the chronic illness, I had environmental chemical illnesses, I had that cavitation surgery that had a bunch of infection. So chronic illness, chronic infection, early childhood abuse, made for kind of like a perfect storm, you know, with me. And I got really sick of letting the explosive stuff take over, because that's not who I am. I'm not that angry, horrible, cut you down to 2-inch size person. And I got sick of being so freaking reactive all the time, and then having to apologize, and then having to apologize, and then having to apologize. I am learning to accept the messiness, especially now that I'm in day 14 on that neurocycle app. Like, it's definitely bringing stuff up, and it's definitely gotten messy. But I am not shutting down. I'm feeling the mess. I'm working through it. And I do feel like my reactivity has gotten a lot better. My road rage has gotten a lot better. You know, even the way I handled the fight with my father yesterday has gotten a lot better. I'm flabbergasted, you know, that I'm 43 years old and dealing with having to tell my parents, you know, you can't talk to me like that anymore. You can't call me names. You can't belittle me. You can't put me down. Like, so I'm learning some healthy boundaries, and that has a tendency to piss people off, especially because you're no longer fitting inside the box that they put you in. So it feels good taking my power back. And I think that's going to help too with my reactivity, because I think an oppressed person, right, somebody who doesn't feel like they're in their power, is going to be a lot more reactive than a person who's in their power. So if you struggle with mental illness, if you struggle with gut issues, if you struggle with, you know, anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, you've tried all kinds of pills, you've tried all kinds of doctors, and nothing seems to have worked, you know, I highly recommend you giving me a call and seeing if one of these other outside of the box modalities is right for you. Oh no, now I sounded like a pharmaceutical company commercial. That's not what I meant. I meant, yeah, everybody's path is going to look differently. And that's why there's a couple beautiful different modalities out there. And I'm having a lot of fun learning them, and I'm having a lot of fun getting to see how they're going to work for my clients. You don't have to stay stuck. You don't have to stay stuck. You don't have to stay stuck. There are answers out there. There are people who want to help. Stay tuned.